So flower communion is something that Unitarian Universalist churches do each spring at some point in time because it's deep in their Unitarian roots. It's called the flower communion, although some people will just refer to it as the flower ceremony. It was founded in Norbert's Unitarian Church in Prague in what was then Czechoslovakia. He introduced the flower service in his home church on June 4th, 1923, the last day before church would recess for the summer. And most of this history is provided by Reginald Zatoli. And of course, church was out for the summer because they were tending farms and they were growing food, and then later they were harvesting crops. So church didn't gather in the summertime in 1923. What Reverend Chapek wanted was a symbolic ritual that would bind people together during this time away over the summer, and always. But many members of the congregation had a history of their families being persecuted by the Catholic Church leaders. So a traditional Christian community service of bread and wine would probably be unacceptable to a lot of people in his congregation. Funny that we should find ourselves in the same space here today. Eventually, he decided that a fundamental beauty of their land should be included as a central element of the service. Flowers. Flowers from a faithfully tended garden, or those volunteering their splendor on the roadside. The whole congregation participated, children and adults alike. It was so successful that Reverend Chapek continued the tradition year after year. Flower communion first came to the United States in 1940 by Chapek's wife, Maja Chapek, who was a minister in her own right. She brought the tradition to the Unitarian Church of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And this was a time where Unitarians and Universalists had not merged into one denomination yet. So Maja was also Czechoslovakian. She had met Norbert in New York City when he was earning his PhD. It was actually at his wife's urging that he left his original Baptist ministry and turned to Unitarianism. I'm sorry that we don't know her Unitarian roots. That would be an interesting story. The Chapeks returned to what was then Czechoslovakia in 1921. And that's where they established their larger church in Prague. It was in the Prague church that the flower communion was introduced. People were asked to just bring a flower of choice, either from their own garden, or if they didn't have their own gardens, grab one out of the field or by the roadside. When they arrived at church, there was a large vase that had already been prepared, and it was attended by children in the church. Children have also always been a very important part of the flower ceremony. So each person placed their flower in the communal vase, and that symbolized what Unitarians hold so dear, which is the free will by which we join together, and the free will by which we become members in a congregation, or we just become long-term friends in the congregation. So once the vase stood as a symbol of the church united in fellowship. In Chapek's church, after the vase was filled, it was taken to the front of the church and placed on a table. And Reverend Chapek said a prayer. Today we will actually all be saying the prayer together. And as people left the service, they took from the vase a flower, one different than the one they came in with. And one of the significances of flower communion is that no two flowers are alike. Because no two people are alike, and everyone has their own unique contribution to make. Just as the kids told us in the play this morning, all the flowers in that garden had a different opinion on things. But it was important to have all those opinions together. And together, all of our different flowers make a beautiful display, from the yellows and reds and oranges and pinks and lavenders and deep purples. Our common bouquet would not be the same without the unique addition of each person's flower. We even took a few, not many, but a few daffodils out of our own garden, as we felt that was important to have the flowers that are grown right here. The service today is a statement about our unique Unitarian Universalist fellowship here in Bozeman, our unique community. So for any of you who have heard this story before, you also know the Chapeks were eventually separated by World War II. Maja she was in the United States, and she actually could not get back to Czechoslovakia. And Norbert Chapek was already in Czechoslovakia. And it wasn't until the war was over that his death was discovered at the hands of the Nazis. And it was Chapek's liberal message that drew their attention. Had he not been outspoken, he probably would have just gone under the radar. But what he said over and over again is that every person has worth. Every person is important. Chapek, even when the times where he could not access the church, he would do his flower communion with dandelions or whatever he could find to bring that feeling of together, even in those difficult times during the war. And as we look at the bouquet of flowers here today, let us hear his hope. He never lost hope, and his kindness. He would use this as part of the flower ceremony. And we use this prayer to hold the principles for which he lived. It was a stunning and outstanding life, and I'm going to put a little more on the listserv later because it's an intergenerational and I don't want to go on and on. But you can see a little more later. So let us not hear only the blessing, but the comfort that he found in his faith. So Chapek's blessing for his congregation. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amidst diversities of knowledge and diversity of gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship or doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship. May we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do the work that needs doing in this world.